This rum here is the Don Q 8-year-old 40% double-aged rum from Puerto Rico. We have talked about Don Q before. It's made by Distillería Serralles, and we've talked enough about it that I don't need to go into any more than the bare bones of details, which is to say, this is a company that is supposedly the most popular rum on the island, or the rum maker on the island. They sell more than everybody else, including Bacardi, even though there are other smaller distilleries around the place. They've been around since the early 19th century. They started in the mid-19th century to produce rums, and somewhere around 1934, I think it was, they started to introduce the Don Q brand of rums, which are all column still, all molasses-based, all made in the Spanish style, which is to say that it's all about barrel and blending management more than anything else. For the most part, all through their history, they've pretty much stayed with straightforward blends and of some ages, right? I don't know when the various aged editions started to come out, but of late, we have started to see a little bit more of the 5-year-olds and 8-year-olds or whatever. This one's a little bit peculiar, though, in the sense that it isn't one of the back bar staples and mixing agents that come from the basic line, the bottom end line, if you want to call it that, which is to say, it isn't the 151, it isn't the gold or the añejo, it isn't the cristal, which is all made for mixing and cocktails and so on. This comes from the Serralles collection. Now, the Serralles collection is a tier of their supposedly more premium rums that we have covered before. And I've only got 2 more left to go, even though there is a third one that I would have liked to get, but I never got a chance to try. This one, what they've started doing is they've started to age it a little bit more seriously and put these various editions out. There's even a spice rum in that collection, which confuses me, but we can pass on that. This one is, they call it, depending on whether you look at the website or the bottle label, it's either called a finished rum or a double-aged rum. But for my money, it is double-aged, right? It has been aged. It is a blend of rums 5 to 8 years old in ex-bourbon barrels. They say white oak, but I think we can assume that it's ex-bourbon, and which basically makes it a 5-year-old by standard nomenclature. And then they rest it, but for my money, it's aging in Zinfandel casks for another 3 years. And then they put it out the door, right? Now, the whole business about finishing and double maturation is actually not a very old process. It's been, in the last 10 years, we've started to see more and more independents starting to do it. You could argue that Renegade was one of the first to give it greater visibility because all their rums were what they called additional cask evolution, and they had the standard X years of aging, and then they finished it for 3 to 6 months in some other cask of some other kind, whether it was a whiskey cask or a cognac cask or a sherry cask. It really doesn't matter. But what you've started to notice in the years since then is that we started to see more and more independents begin to issue such rums with that kind of finish. And of late, I would suggest it's no more than in the last 5 years or so, we started to see producers, primary producers, the ones who have the entire cane to cork, vertically integrated distillery, the whole 9 yards, as part of their company thing, DDL or Foursquare or the Jamaican distilleries and Don Q and so on. That is a welcome development, but it does raise issues with respect to things like GIs and PDOs and whether this is now considered a pure rum or not. And I say that it's a recent development, but I remember back in 2008, 2009, when I first started getting back into this, there were always the occasional rums that had that sort of finishing, or they were matured completely in some kind of cask that wasn't ex-bourbon. The Legendario that I did the other day, for example, was Muscatel. And there were always these dark rumors swirling around whether the barrels were dry, whether they were wet, or whether they even had like a few inches of the wine or cognac or brandy or whatever it was floating around in that. And they just put rum on top of that, which is one reason why they had this reputation for being dosed all the time. But be that as it may, I've given you the details of this particular rum. Don Q does tend to make some very interesting upscale versions of their rums, and I don't think this is going to be any different. I did try this at the German Rum Fest some time ago, where the very friendly brand rep Duncan Hayter gave me a run through of pretty much the entire line, except the last one that he didn't have on the table that day. But it's enough for us to get a really good sense of what Don Q is trying to do, and that's what we're going to do here now. 40% isn't going to get you very far, but it's surprisingly how much you actually do get in this rum. The nose is got all the traditional hits are playing. So caramel, toffee, blancmange, vanilla, all of these are completely expected. What ends up happening is that there's a development of florals and fruity notes that are really quite pleasant. Light, but they are there. With a little bit of patience, you can really get quite a bit of it. And that is pretty much like licorice and peaches and apricots. There's a very faint pineapple or citrus line running through it that is really quite good to see, because it kind of like balances off everything else. And there's even some damp tobacco, if you can believe it, and dark grapes. There's a sort of a winey note to it, which is probably coming from the Zinfandel casks. No surprises there. Tasting it is something else too. I've got nothing bad to say about this. It really works rather well. The rum is tasty to a fault. Now, I'm trying this at 9 o'clock in the morning, Calgary time. So, my palate is fresh. I've got all my senses dialed up to 11 and sharp as anything. So what I'm getting here is a fair amount of fruits. Again, it's ripe mangoes, not too sweet. It's got peaches and apricots, a bit of plums. There's some prune juice in there that I really kind of like. And of course, there's the pineapples, very ripe, squishy pineapples and citrus and so on that's still there. The damp aromatic tobacco seems to have taken a back seat there. There's a touch of licorice, again, that winey note that is far from unpleasant, and it all comes together in a fairly cohesive whole. The finish, unfortunately, isn't up to scratch here. It goes too fast. It kind of like goes there, comes on, it's gone. And that's a function of the 40%. So I am going to score this probably around 83, 84 points. The written review is going to come alongside all of this. I like the rum a fair bit. There is more here going on than even the Bacardi Ocho, for example, which I quite liked. I haven't tried too many of their finished editions, but 3 years in a Zinfandel cask for this one is really going to make a statement. And even if it is a little bit too weak for my personal palate, I don't think anybody who tries this is going to be disappointed by it. It really is a nice rum. I think it goes for about 50, 60 euros or something like that. I actually haven't checked, but it's definitely a step up in price from the rums that we have tried before, because I'm kind of going up the ladder here, right? There's only one more to come now. And I think that anybody who does try it and takes their time with it, this is not a rum to mix, at least I don't think so. They're not going to be disappointed, and the money would be well spent. It is a terrific little sipping rum. And if you think 83, 84 points is not too high, well, to me, that's a function of the strength. I really do believe this thing should be stronger. I think it has the potential to be even better, but for what we do get, no disappointment at all. That's pretty much all I got for this one. I will try to post the next one literally within the next 24 hours, because I've got both the samples here right now, and I want to make sure that I get this thing out the door for the gentleman on YouTube, who I will always reference because he was the one who made me do it. So have a really nice day, everybody, and take care. Bye-bye.